Welcome to part 5 of our 1 Kings 11, 26 to 43. And in this video, we will be looking at verses 33 to 36. So as usual, we will start by listening to Shmulov. Okay, so here we have verse 33, verse 32 and 31. He's talking about taking the 10 tribes and giving them to Jeroboam, and taking the one tribe, leaving one tribe with did he say that already? Yeah, he'll leave one tribe with, at this point it just says Solomon. We find out shortly that it's going to be his son. So why is God doing this? Well, he gives a reason. He gives reasons here.
Ya'an asher azavuni.
Ya'an asher azavuni. Because, we're going to put those together, because they have abandoned me. Now this is they, not him. We got an u there. Azavu, and then ni is the 1cs suffix. Because they have forsaken me or abandoned me. Let me just see what. Yeah, they just do because for both of these together. Ya'an asher. How did they abandon him?
Vayishtachavu le'ashtoret Elohet Sidonin.
Vayishtachavu, and they worshipped, or because they abandoned me by worshiping, you could say. I mean, literally it says, and they worshipped. Now, if you don't know this verb, it's got its own binyanim, or its own binyan. It's kind of weird, but it's really easy to recognize. Vayishtachavu, hishtachavu, hishtachave, whatever. But it's so long and different. It means to bow down, as in to prostrate oneself. Sometimes it just means that, before a king or whatever. But often it means worship. So literally means they bow down, right? They bow down to Ashtoret, the goddess, because there's a female goddess of Sidon. But bowing down to an idol means you're worshiping it, so hence the meaning. So they bow down to Ashtoret, the goddess of Sidon.
Lichmosh Elohe Moav.
Lichmosh, Elohei Moav, and Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, of Moab.
Ulmilkom Elohe Vene'ammon.
Umilkom, and Milcom, the god of the sons of Ammon, of the Ammonites. So here, Elohe is just being used in all three cases. There's no distinction between gender. It's all plural, formally. So this is a case where Elohim, here it's in construct, but Elohim is being used for foreign deities as just gods, lowercase god, as opposed to gods. Often it's gods, the gods of these people. Here we have some names, so we know we're talking about a single entity. Anyway, so they worship these, and what else did they do? How did they abandon God? God? By worshiping these and by not doing something else.
Velo halechu vidrachai.
Velo halechu vidrachai. And they did not walk. So again, halechu, plural, from halach. They did not walk vidrachai, derech vidrachai, in my ways. Plural, we know it's plural because of this patach here. Vidrachi would be my way, vidrachai, my ways.
La'asot hayashar be'enai.
Okay. To do, they did not walk in my ways. To do that which is upright in my eyes. This dot is not a hirik. This is a cantillation mark, the dot and the little line, little diagonal line there. So the vowel is the patach, because eyes is in the dual, and dual is, the construct of dual is the same as the masculine plural ending. So that's why it's plural or dual. To do, or by doing, what is upright in my sight.
Vehukkotai umishpatai keDavid aviv.
Vehukotai, and my statutes and my judgments. What do they say? Ordinances, I think. My ordinances. KeDavid aviv, as David his father, meaning now Solomon's father. So it's it's a bit weird. We don't have a verb for this, but clearly this is the verb that governs all of this. So they did not walk in my ways to do what is upright in my eyes and to do my statutes and my judgments as David, his father, meaning Solomon's father, did. Okay. Here we have our verse that we just read. I think I formatted it a little bit differently because in the Hebrew reader, the Bible reader, I just have 6 lines. So sometimes I can't do as much as I would like. Here I have more space, so I lined all these things up rather than having it stick out here. You can see the parallelism of these different gods or idols or goddesses here. So where are these again? We've seen them before with Solomon. So Ashtoret, Elohei Sidon, Sidon's up here. That's where Jezebel's going to come from later and influence the whole Omrid dynasty with Ahab there. And Chemosh is from Moab, which is down here. And Milcom, the god of Bnei Ammon, the sons of Ammon. The Ammonites are kind of in the middle here. Verse 34.
ולא אקח את כל הממלכה מידו.
ולא אקח את כל הממלכה מידו. So now we have a future here. Ekach, from lakach. You can see the dagesh forte there, which is the lamed. But I will not take et kol hamamlacha, the whole kingdom, miyado, from his hand. Now, I've lost track here. So here he says what the people did. Okay. And back here, okay, so he does say back here that he will take the one tribe. It will be for him, for Solomon. So we're still on Solomon. And here I will not take the whole kingdom from his hand, Solomon's hand. All right.
כי נשיא אשיתנו כל ימי חייו.
כי נשיא אשיתנו kol yemei chayav. For a nasi, a chief, we'll go with that for the moment. Ki nasi ashitenu. This is from sheet, to establish, to set, to put. Again, we got the aleph there of the yiktol, so 1cs yiktol future. I will set him. I will make him, right? Ki nasi ashitenu. This enu is the 3ms suffix. So, I will not take the whole kingdom from him, from his hand. For or but. I wonder what they do here. But. They do but. Okay, so it's not cause, it's adverse, it's contrast. But a nasi, I will set him, kol yemei chayav, all the days of his life. So he's not going to take this from Solomon's hand during his lifetime. He's going to remain as a nasi, a chief, all the days of his life.
למען דוד עבדי.
And we get the reason, as we've seen before, Lema'an David Avdi, on account of David, my servant.
אשר בחרתי אותו.
Asher bacharti oto, whom I have chosen. We can simply say whom because this goes over here. Who I have chosen him, but we don't say that in English. Whom I have chosen. And what else?
אשר שמר מצוותיי וחוקותיי.
And Asher Shamar, and whom, or who has kept, that's how I guess we'd say this, who has kept mitzvotai, my commandments, again plural because of that patach, v'chukotai, and my statutes or ordinances, again it's plural. It's not patach here because it's in pause, but the most important thing is it's not a hirik. Okay, so it's not singular. So 2 things. Well, one thing, he's doing this. He's going to make and leave Solomon as a nasi all for the rest of his life on account of David, his servant, God's servant, Yahweh's servant. Because he's chosen him, election, and because David has kept his commandments and his statutes. So we have two things, right? Again, we see this all the time. God's reasoning is because his choice and because of obedience, the divine side and the human side. It's the same with Abraham, right? Abraham, God makes clear he took him not because he was worshiping God, but he was an idolater. His family was an idolater. He chose him. He chose Abraham. And yet, you see in the text that he is obedient, and his faith is credited to him because he believed God, and then he demonstrates it in Genesis 22 when he follows through when God tests him with a big faith test with his son Isaac. So this juxtaposition is all over the place. What I want to look at here in this verse is this nasi. Now, the question is this a demotion? Because nasi is not melech. And later we're going to see in, I don't know if it's in this video or not. No, it's not. I think it's coming up. That Jeroboam, God will say, through Achia, he will say, I will make you a king over all Israel, melech. So if Jeroboam's going to be a king, melech, with 10 tribes, is Solomon less than a king? Is he some sort of lower rank? Because here he's called a nasi. And this is a point that's discussed. So let's first look at the word. What does it mean? So Naidoti, New International Dictionary of Theological, I'm not sure what this is, anyway, New International Dictionary of something exegesis. Anyway, the word nasi, occurring 131 times, so lots of occurrences, derives from nasa, meaning to lift or to carry, and appears to have originally signified one lifted up or a chief. Makes sense. It occurs most often in numbers, especially in enumerations of the chiefs of the Israelite tribes. So in numbers you have a lot of, each tribe comes forth and brings gifts and things like this. And their nasi is used for each tribe leader. It never says the king of Judah, the king of Naphtali, or anything like that. It's always something other than that, and nasi is one of the words used. Now, so that's the meaning of nasi, the basic word study. Kogan talks about this in the Anchor Bible. The Hebrew nasi, ruler, he makes a point that it's not prince, it's not a royal thing, apparently, pointing to Spicer. Now, I don't know if this is contra Spicer or Spicer supports that. Any case, he's saying ruler is the usual term for the pre-monarchic tribal leadership of Israel in the priestly narration of the Pentateuch and Joshua, and influences Ezekiel's use of the term for Israel's future ruler. So, nasi, he says, is a term that was used for tribal leadership before they had kings. And it shows up again in Ezekiel when it's talking about the future Messiah. He goes on. He says, contrasted with the promise of kingship to Jeroboam, verse 37, that's where the issue is, right? If Jeroboam's a king and Solomon is a nasi, does that mean Solomon is less? He says this statement might imply that Solomon was to be demoted from the status of king to the status of chief over Judah. But the continuation of this verse, for the sake of David, here, Lema'an David Avdi, upon which this statement rests, shows that this can hardly be its intention. So I think what he's saying is, David, he's doing this because of David. He's not going to make him a nasi or make him something less because of David. Rather, nasi seems to be the term for the Davidic king preferred in certain pre-exilic circles. So he points to verses in Ezekiel. So because nasi is used there of the Davidic king, ultimately the Messiah, then this should not be regarded as a demotion. Perhaps an expression of an opposition to absolute kingship, okay, because the Israelite kings were not supposed to be kings like the nations, where they just do whatever they want. They're despots, which is actually kind of what Solomon was becoming, right? With all his forced labor, he was behaving like the kings of the nations. So maybe this is almost corrective. No, you need to be an Israelite king, a Nasi. I'm not sure. But he suggests here that perhaps this term is used in opposition to absolute kingship with an undertone of longing for the tribal rule of Israel's early days. And if this is the meaning of its use in verse 34, it is unique in all of Deuteronomistic literature. Okay. Now, this is not to say that the messianic Davidic king line can't be referred to as king. You read in the prophets in the end there, and they refer to the Messiah as king. So it's not an either or, but this shouldn't be viewed as a demotion. Okay, verse 35 and 36. We'll go and listen to both of those. Verse 35.
ולקחתי המלוכה מיד בנו.
Okay, so now we're going to hear about his son. V'lakachti, and I will take, v'katal, one CS, v'lakachti, I will take hamilucha, the kingdom, miyad, miyad beno, from the hand of his son.
ונתתיها לך.
Unitati halecha. Okay, remember this is Achia speaking to Jeroboam. Well, it's Yahweh speaking through Achia to Jeroboam. And I will give it to you. So here's our object, meaning the kingdom. This is feminine. Unitati halecha. I will give it to you.
את עשרת השבטים.
Et aseret hashivatim. And this is that location where Kogan said this is the preferred spelling or pronunciation of 10 with hashivatim. Earlier it was asara or something. So here, this is that verse he's talking about. Now, we kind of have two objects here. They refer to the same thing, but syntactically we kind of have two because the first object is the pronominal suffix. Unetatiha, I will give it, hamilucha, that's the it, to you, et aseret hashivatim, 10 tribes, the 10 tribes. So we have it, and then we have an explication, is that the right word? A further explanation as to what the kingdom is. It is the 10 tribes. So you could regard this as in apposition, I'm not sure, but it's pretty clear what's going on. And the next verse, 36.
ולבנו אתן שבט אחד.
Velivno eten shevet echad, and to his son I will give shevet echad. Okay, I'm going to give you 10, but to his son, Solomon's son, Ben with an O there, 2, I will give eten, future, right? Because you got a yiktol there. Shevet echad, one tribe. Now earlier he had said hashevet ha'echad with the article. The article in Hebrew doesn't always mean we should translate it with the. Sometimes it has other purposes. So I'm not quite sure what it was doing there before, where he said the one tribe I will give. Now it's without the article, and it's not definite. So to his son I will give one tribe.
למען היות ניר לדוד עבדי כל הימים לפני בירושלים.
Okay, why is he going to give him one tribe? In order that there would be, here's the verb to be in the infinitive construct, in order that there would be a nir, a lamp, for David my servant, kol hayamim, all the days, lefanai, before me, Birushalayim, in Jerusalem. Now we know a little bit about Jerusalem here.
העיר אשר בחרתי לי.
Ha'ir asher bacharti li, the city which I have chosen for myself. Okay, God's possession, special possession.
לשום שמי שם.
Lasum shemi sham, to put, sum is to put, shemi, my name, there. Okay. Okay, I think the Hebrew is fairly straightforward there. What we want to look at here, especially, is nir. Okay, so why is he leaving this one tribe with Solomon, or more specifically with his son? Why is he letting this Davidic dynasty stay? In order that there would be a lamp for David, my servant. We're going to look at this, do a little vocab session. Nir and ner both come from the same root, which is nun, vav, resh. Don't have a lot of examples here. We have 4 words. The first one is, well, these two are lamp. This one, the second one, nir, is our word. Okay. Ner is the one that's more common. 44 occurrences in the Hebrew Bible, just 5 for this. We also have menorah, same root. That's one of those words that people know, menorah in English. Menorah, so there's our menorah. And you can see, of course, it's a type of lamp. And Hebrew nouns often start, they build on other words, and they start often with mem or tav. That's very, very common. If you look in a lexicon or a Hebrew English dictionary, or just a Hebrew dictionary, you'll find lots of a big section for mem and a big section for tav. So, menorah, a normal formulation of a noun. Now, this one is weird, okay? Sanverim. They say it comes from this here. It means blindness. So it's like, okay, we're going from lamp to blindness. What's going on? It's the opposite. And it's got a samech, which is not what you would think of for a noun pattern. What's going on? I looked at it in Nidoti. It had no entry. It didn't even show the word. Of course, it only occurs 3 times, but Nidoti is pretty exhaustive. I looked at it in Klein's, and he had one line, just said what it is, blindness, and a little bit of text, but he didn't talk about really much of anything. So I went to T-Dot. T-Dot, of course, is that Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament, translated from the German, the 15 volumes or whatever it is, and they have stuff to say about it. So what do they say? The customary derivation of sanverim, our word here, this word, from the Semitic root nun vav resh, this here, is untenable because no analogy exists for the assumed nominal form. So they're saying we don't see other nouns in Hebrew made this way, taking the root, adding samech on it. Evidently, they don't. And, so that's one problem, and because the meaning is incompatible with nun vav resh. Okay, it doesn't mean lamp. It's not compatible. So what do they suggest? They say this word, our word in question here, in fact represents a foreign word from a non-Semitic language in a Hebrew plural form. We see the eem there. Perhaps better vocalized as sinurim. So you could take these vowels out and do some other pointing here, right? Si, nu, make that a shurik there, rim. So they're suggesting that. I'm not sure why, but anyway, they are. They say this foreign word is related to other Akkadian words of similar foreign derivation, referring to severe visual handicaps. And they give some examples here. Weak-sighted or severely visually handicapped at night, probably also night blindness. Okay, interesting. So not blindness in the normal sense, but some sort of weak sight or impaired sight or temporarily impaired sight, don't see well at night or something like that. That's what these other words, that's not this word, that's similar words or of that vein. They continue, although sanverim was later misunderstood as blindness, according to these guys, witnesses, that means other manuscripts, let's just assume that's what he means by that, and the rendering in the Septuagint, the Greek Septuagint, suggests rather a severe but temporary visual handicap leading to a loss of orientation. We have no way of determining the fundamental meaning of these words. Okay. So not blindness in the normal sense, but some sort of temporary visual handicap where you're disoriented. You don't quite know what's going on. Now, if we look at these 3 instances, there's just 3 of them in 2 verses. It fits this, which maybe is where they got the definition. I don't know, but maybe they have things from other sources here as well. So Genesis 19:11, this is the Sodom and Gomorrah scene where the guys are trying to get at the angels that are come to visit Lot and rescue him. It says, and they struck with the angels, and they struck with blindness. Okay, they're using blindness here in the ESV. It's basanverim. They struck, ba is their with, basanverim, the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out, groping for the door. So we see that sense of loss of orientation. Whether they knew they were blind or not, we don't really know. Assume they maybe did, but it doesn't say so. They're like confused and they can't find the door and they keep trying. The other text is 2 Kings 6, verse 18. And this is when the Syrians come to get Elisha, and he's in Dothan, which is a town near Samaria, just to the north of it. And we read here in verse 6, chapter 6:18. And when the Syrians came down against him, against Elisha, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, please strike this people basanverim, okay, with this sanverim. So he struck them basanverim in accordance with the prayer of Elisha, and God strikes them that way. Now, I don't have the verses here, but if you read the next couple verses there, you'll see that what happens is Elisha goes out and meets them. He talks to them and says, what are you looking for, or something like that, if I remember right. And they say, well, I don't know if they reply, but he says, I will take you to who you should see. You know what? Let me pause and get the verse. Okay. The word of God is too important to be guessing what it is. We just read it, right? So verse 18, we just read. And then it says, verse 19, and Elisha said to them, okay, so he goes and speaks to them. This is not the way, this is not the city. It's a little bit cryptic. Follow me and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. Which they're actually seeking him. He doesn't say I'm going to bring you to Elisha. He says I'm going to bring you to the man whom you seek. And he led them to Samaria. As soon as they entered Samaria, Elisha said, O Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. So the Lord opened their eyes and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria, which is where the king is. And as soon as the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, my father, shall I strike them down? Shall I strike them down? He answered, you shall not strike them down. Would you strike down those whom you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow? Set bread before them that they may eat and drink and go to their master. So he talks to them and he walks with them, and he does this. It's almost like a Star Wars thing, right? These are not the droids you're looking for. He says, this is not the way, this is not the city. And they follow him into the city, and then he opens their eyes and they realize what's going on. So it sounds like they didn't even realize they were blind. They were disoriented, they were in a fog. So it's a different kind of blindness that's going on here. It's like a muddledness, vision, physical vision, but not totally, right? Because they're able to walk and talk and see people and think things are normal. So it's not something else. Anyway, that's totally a rabbit trail, but I thought it was interesting. And it does illustrate that some of these roots that we see in books are somewhat guesses sometimes, and sometimes other scholars have other ideas that maybe make more sense. Now, let's also look at the word or. Just take the opportunity to do that because it fits well with lamp. So or is light, ner is lamp. So or, let there be light, right in the beginning of Genesis 1, verse 3 or whatever it is. Vayhi or yehi or, vayhi or. God said, let there be light, and there was light. That's or. And we have the noun form, we have the verb form. We have other words here, ma'or, so that's light. The urim, the urim and the thummim. I think I looked this up. What did Isby say? I have it here on my other screen. Isby says the urim and the thummim, however you say that in English, perhaps means light and perfection. So those articles that God was using to give answers. So light, shedding light on something. Ur can also mean fire. Ura is light. This one's interesting. Ora. This is the death in the pot text. In the stories of Elisha later in 2 Kings, we have the situation where the sons of the prophets, who are like the apprentices, they go off, they're hungry, they go get these herbs, and they bring them, and one guy does this, he picks the wrong type of herb, and he puts it in the pot, and it's a poisonous thing, and they say, oh, there's death in the pot, and then Elijah purifies the food. But the word for herb there is ora. Okay, it's not a generic word for herb, and it appears that that's an herb that has a light-colored leaf or something like that. That's a guess, not my guess. That's other people's guesses. But so there we have an herb, a plant that has that word light in it. Then we got a bunch of names: Uri, Ur, or in English, Ur. Interesting. So the place that Abraham comes from, the place of idolatry that he comes from, is named light. Uriel, so God is light. Uriah, Uriah, okay? So Bathsheba's husband, Uriah the Hittite, his name means something like Yahweh is light. Interesting. So just a little vocab lesson there. What else? Okay, another nice verse that pulls these two together. Ner le ragli devarecha. Ner le ragli, a lamp, so that's lamp here. Regel is foot. A lamp to my feet, to my foot, literally. Devarecha. Davar is word, is your word. A lamp to my feet is your word. The or, and a light, lintivati. I don't know this word here, but it means path. There's a whole bunch of vocab that's kind of poetic. They use it in poetic circles. And so if you do a search for this, you'll see it's like in Job and Psalms and poetic bits of the prophetic literature. So when you get into prophetic or to poetic and also prophetic material, then there's a certain corpus of vocab you kind of have to pick up that you don't really see much in narrative. So in this example here, we have ner in this verse, our lamp, and we have or. So it's a nice verse to kind of have them both together. And it's a great verse, right? A lamp to my feet is your word, and your word is a light to my path. And for me, this is particularly special because one year, many years ago now, my wife made me a birthday cake, and this is what she made. So she put in here as unpointed Hebrew, ner le ragli devarecha. Isn't that nice? A lamp to my feet is your word. And she's got the menorahs here, which of course, and here, this is from the same root as ner as well. So a special type of lamp, menorah. And here's another picture of it with our menorah lit. And ner l'ragli devarecha. Very cool. Now, nir. So we're moving now to talk about Rehoboam, right? So Rehoboam is going to be the nir, or rather, the dynastic line is going to be the nir. And Rehoboam is the next one. As a familiar symbol of domestic and working life, Jeremiah 25:10, I'm going to show you that in a second. The lamp, ner, is a natural metaphor for life. It is used primarily as a symbol for the quality and length of life. Let's look at this verse here. So Jeremiah 25:10 in English here says, moreover, I will banish them from the voice of mirth, the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, the voice of the bride, the grinding of the millstones. Okay, these are natural and good things in life. Happiness, weddings, marriage, food making, and the light of the lamp, v'or ner. Okay, so when they say here, this is a familiar symbol of domestic and working life. a lamp. It represents, it conjures up regular, normal, good life. Now here it is a ner for David Avdi, and it has a special meaning. Specific representatives of the Davidic line are described as a lamp. We have some verses here. In this sense, always near in Kings and Chronicles. So in Kings and Chronicles, representatives of the Davidic line that are referred to as ner or nir, it's actually nir that they use. You remember there was only 5 examples of that and 44 of ner. So this is one of our texts that has nir, one of the 5, and it is in Kings. So, and it makes sense, right? It fits. It is an example of a representative of the Davidic line. The context usually refers to some potentially fatal threat. Okay. Notably through David's own family, and they give some verses there. The meaning here is neither life, like we saw earlier, so not specifically life, not generically life, nor yoke, dominion. I don't know where that's coming from, or who Hansen is, but anyway. But the meaning is a guarantee that David's house will survive even the darkest days because of God's covenant promise. So when you see Nir in the Kings and Chronicles, it's a representative of a Davidic line where there's a threat, and the threat will survive because of God's promise. Sorry, another sneeze. Okay, so it's a theologically loaded term in the sense that it is used in almost a technical sense to refer to the threat to the Davidic line and to God's promise to keep it alive, a nir. 1 Samuel 3:3. So we'll see some examples of this. Now this is ner, not just nir, but ner too can be talking about this, something that's just barely flickering, right? The lamp, ner, of God had not yet gone out, 1 Samuel 3:3, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of Yahweh where the ark of God was. And Woodhouse refers to this as there's like a glimmer of hope. The context, of course, is Eli, and Eli is not doing well. He's getting old, he's getting blind, he didn't train his kids well, his sons are abusing their position, and the presence of God in Israel is just really dying out. And of course, this comes at the end of all those judges cycles, and God is going to revive things with a little boy named Samuel. And literally, in the tent, or wherever they house, wherever they were, it says the temple, the lamp had not yet gone out. So there's like a physical lamp that hadn't yet gone out. But, of course, it's symbolic. The light of God had not yet gone out. So there's an example in 1 Samuel 3:3. In 2 Samuel 21:11 or 17, now talking about David, we have a Davidic person in place here. Then David's men swore to him, "You shall no longer go out with us to battle, lest you quench the lamp of Israel," the ner of Israel. What are they saying? They're saying, we don't want you out in battle because we can't afford to have you die because you are the ner of Israel. You are the Davidic lamp, what is left. It's precious. It has to be preserved. In 1 Kings 15, so moving ahead from where we are, we read, "Nevertheless, for David's sake, the Lord, his God, gave him," that is Rehoboam, "a nir," just like our verse here, "in Jerusalem, setting up his son," which is Abijam of Aram, "after him and establishing Jerusalem." And the Net Bible refers to this as, in their translation, "he maintained his dynasty." So, Rehoboam, who of course is Solomon's son, takes over after him. This is 4 chapters down the road. He does not follow God. And what this verse is telling us is that even though he didn't follow God, God was not going to snuff out the Davidic line. He was going to keep a nir in Jerusalem, and that nir would be Abijam, his son. And then the other example, I don't know if this is all of them. This is 3 nirs. There's 2 more somewhere. 2 Kings 8, so that's quite a bit later, the next book. It says, "Yet the Lord was not willing to destroy Judah for the sake of David his servant." Again, just like this, right? Lema'an heyot nir leDavid avdi. In order that there would be a nir for David my servant. Same thing again. "Since he promised to give a nir to him and to his sons forever." And here you really do see the idea of a succession, right? There is a nir who's going to stay. There's going to be a lamp. Now, I want to do a little, this is the end of our, I think, let's see here. Yeah, so next time we'll go to part 5. But before we do that, I want to show you something. I have here, many people have these, not so unique, but I have here a lamp. This is a, let's get this. If I tip it, sorry, tip it, all the oil is going to come out. So this is one of those, oh, you can see the oil dripping there on the plate. One of those oil lamps, olive oil lamps. So I put olive oil in there and a wick, and I'm going to light it. Hopefully the rest of my oil here doesn't light up. I don't think it should. Then I'm going to shut the lights off and I'm going to experience what a nir is. I think it's worth the object lesson here. Oh, I got to get it lit first. I guess I'm doing this too low for the camera. And let me kill some lights. We'll kill that one. 1 second. Actually, we'll put this one back on. We'll kill this one. Okay, I need a little bit of light. Watch the camera. That is very dark. Okay, I'm really going to kill the lights here. Let me look at my own camera so I can see what's going on here. Okay, there is a nir, right? Not a lot there. You can't even see my face. So God was leaving a nir for himself in the Davidic line. It's not much. And you get to some of those texts with Joash and Athaliah where that light gets very, very dim. But this is a reminder. I mean, it's a beautiful image here. No matter how dark it gets, God's promise will stay. And the outcome of his promise to David, which is the Messiah, who will save the world, or anyone who unites with him, he's there for the world. It will happen, no matter how dark it gets. This little light is all that God needs. Okay, so when you think of nir, think of this darkness, think of this light. I'm going to put my light on again so you can see me a little bit. It hasn't gotten very light. And we will continue with part 5 and starting in verse 37 next time.